How serious are you about becoming a better speaker? Are you confident enough to hear the truth? Michael Jordan had a coach throughout his entire career. Every professional athlete out there has a coach through their career and beyond. Professional speakers have all been coached. The question is, how do you get from good to great? And the answer is with a coach. Now, Darren is the author of Laugh and Get Rich, and he is also one half of the duo who put together Own the Stage. And he is here tonight to be your presentation coach, to help you go from being good to being great. Now, Darren admits there's no way he could have done this if not for his coach. And he actually had not one, but two. One of them, the 1995 world champion of public speaking, Mark Brown. And that coach gave him the advice that was the exact opposite of what everyone else was giving to him. So it's worth listening to a coach, because that coach helped him win the world championship in 2001. So with that, let's take a minute and go back to Anaheim. Go back to 2001 as they are about to announce the winner of the World Championship of Public Speaking.
And the 2001 World Champion of Public Speaking, Darren LaCroix. King Darren, your subjects would like to hear a few words from you.
Man, that's cool. My first prayers, I asked God if the other 8 contestants could just go over time. That's all I wanted. Again, thank you to my district, Dave McElhaney, Carmen, of course, the great, the one and only, the genius of speaking, Mark Brown, David Brooks, Ed Tate. The champions were so gracious, giving me wisdom and advice, and I knew I would work hard, but they helped keep me on the right track. But I'd really like to dedicate this to 2 men in my life. Just one more little thing. Did anyone else ever cry during this thing? Am I the first one? Does that count as a gesture? Be careful what you tell your kids, because after the silence, I'll never forget. My dad probably doesn't even remember. He said, I don't care what you want to do. Just be the best. And I am, Dad. Someone just said, you're the world champion. What are you gonna do now? I'm going to Disneyland.
No one comes to Toastmasters to be a better speaker at Toastmasters. Think about that. No one comes to Toastmasters to be a better speaker at Toastmasters. We come to be better in the real world, not at our club. So why do you worry how it's going to go at your club? Do you ever see people, not you, but other people who say, well, I can't speak today. The cat, the dog, my kids, me. Shut up! This is Toastmasters. I believe that one day God and Ralph Smedley got together and they formed Toastmasters. Thank you, brother. But we branded it wrong. It should be the greatest place to make mistakes. If you won't risk at your club, and if you are so worried about how it goes at your club, you're never going to be great outside your club. You know that at Toastmasters, we will clap regardless. Exactly my point. I didn't know you were supposed to get hand lotion with your sign up because you clap so often. I joined Toastmasters in 1994 as a place to make mistakes to help me better in the comedy clubs. So when I came to Toastmasters and I saw people not taking stage time, because that's what my mentor said, the most important thing is stage time, stage time, stage time. They told me, Darren, it doesn't matter how you do today. It matters if you go up today, you'll be better next week. They didn't care if I bombed. They cared if I didn't accept the stage time. My goal for you, my story is to help you get more out of Toastmasters by taking more risks, by having more fun at your club. Because when you get out there in the real world, they won't automatically clap. You speak at a Rotary Club and they will get up and leave when your time is up, whether you're done speaking or not. That's why we have the red lights. So I had been a Toastmaster since 1994, and in 2001, when I entered the contest, I didn't enter to win. I actually entered the contest to force myself to be better with the stories I was already telling in my keynote speech, so I would be better. Because I had a day job at the time. I was marketing myself every waking moment, and speaking as often as I could. The one thing I wasn't doing was working on my craft. Meaning making the stories I have better. Because my comedy mentor, not even a speaking mentor at that time, said, Darren, stop trying to find that golden story, that golden ring that will launch your career, because that's what I was looking for. He said, instead, take what you have and make it so good, someone will pay to hear it. Craig Valentine, I know many of you know who he is, one of my best friends in the world, said it so brilliantly. He said, if you want a masterpiece, you have to master the pieces. So you have to only focus on one at a time. And even on your speech itself, you need to focus on the opening for a while. Then focus on the closing. You can't just work on the whole speech. It doesn't work that way. So my mindset, and I love Toastmasters, I'm still a paid member of Toastmasters because it's a great place for me to work out new material. If you're ever in Las Vegas, Powerhouse Pros, Monday night, come join us. I won't be there, but come join us. I'll be speaking at some Toastmaster district around the world, but I'm still a member and I still go to my club because it still brings me value. I did a brand new keynote speech. I have an event every year in Las Vegas called Lady and the Champs. And it's Patricia Fripp, Craig Valentine, and Ed Tate, and it's a 2-day conference, speaker conference, where people come to us from around the world. And every year, because I have a lot of the same people show up again and again, it forces me to create a new speech. So I created a new one this year, and I went to 11 Toastmaster clubs in Las Vegas to work on the new speech. But in 2001, when I competed, I had won 5 levels of the contest. And I had 77 days before I went to the World Championship. Now, when you win the district, whoever wins tomorrow at the International Speech Contest will go to the semifinals, it's called now. It used to be the regionals in the old days when we had to have 3 speeches to win. Now 2? Please. I'm kidding. Kind of. But anyway, I had 77 days between the regional speech and my championship speech. And I had worked on stories I was already telling in my keynote. But I only had 2 really good ones, so I had to start from scratch. And I met Mark Brown. If you don't know Mark Brown won the World Championship in 1995. He's a native of Jamaica. He stands about 6'2". He has a heart of gold, and he laughs like the guy from the 7-Up commercial. Mark was my coach. I drove 2.5 hours to work with Mark, and I had the first version of my speech. And I was so excited to show my coach. So I drove from Boston to New York, where he worked, 2.5-hour drive to get some feedback from my coach. And now keep in mind, I had never been coached in my career, even though I did it professionally part-time. Well, I swear, if you were standing there in the meeting room when I handed Mark my speech, the first version, the greatest speech in the history of Toastmasters, I swore as I handed it to him, you could hear choirs of angels. Oh! As I handed Mark my speech. Mark took the speech. Oh, Dada, we have some work to do. What? I did everything you told me to do. I wrote the greatest speech that I could write. From the level I was at. You see, for me and my level and my education at that point, I did write a pretty good speech. But Mark had been coached before at the world-class level. Mark could instantly see what I couldn't see after 7 years as a Toastmaster, even though I was in 4 clubs. Because, you know my mantra, stage time, stage time, stage time. But what happens if you're doing the stage time, but you're never getting a higher level of perspective? What do you actually do? You reinforce bad habits, right? That's what I was doing. So when I saw that reaction on Mark's face, I knew he was right. And it was painful. And I had a lot to learn. So one of my first lessons was I needed to learn how to be humble. Again. Keeps happening. I don't know why. So in the next 76 minutes and 40 seconds, you are going to walk away with tonight a different perspective on speaking, no matter what level you're at. If you're a new Toastmaster, welcome. Because we're going to teach you right the first time. If you're an experienced Toastmaster, this is going to hurt you more. Because you're going to have to unlearn a lot of things. But my goal is that in the next 76 minutes and 12 seconds, you're going to walk away with the perspective that Mark gave me. Now you're going to see it and understand it, but then you're going to have to go implement it. And what I recommend is, if you can, this week, I want you to evaluate someone at your club. Even if you're not the formal evaluator, evaluate on the coaching checklist that you're going to walk away with. We're going to build the checklist tonight, and you're going to walk away, and this is going to give you a different way to look at speeches. It's that perspective that Mark could see. See, he could see in 2 minutes what I couldn't see after 7 years. You don't know what you don't know. So that being said, we're going to start off by showing you the World Championship speech. And I know some of you have seen this before. You came up and told me you love it, and thank you. I appreciate that. I would love to take all the credit. I had 2 coaches. I was willing to struggle, and I did a lot of praying. By the way, that's legal in the speech contest. I highly recommend it. Even if you don't believe in God, try it out. You may be convinced after. Anyway, sorry. I know, don't talk about God. Well, I'm just telling you my truth. Whatever it is for you. So we're going to jump right into this. And if you've seen this before, I recommend you watch it like a student. See if you can see the pieces that are put together. The first time you hear something, sometimes you get so caught up in the story. I studied 10 years of World Championship videos. I watched the winners over and over again, and I learned more the 3rd and the 4th time I watched them than I ever did the first time. So if you've seen it before, I encourage you, look at it again. You will pick up something new, I guarantee it.
All right.
That was for me. So if we can get the lights, I don't know who's the, thank you very much, Light Master. Let's go now to Anaheim, California. Oh, lights one more time, sorry. I always try to update my presentation. I forgot I updated this. So quick quiz. X's and O's. Which are the hugs and which are the kisses? Raise your hand if you think X is the hugs.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you think O's are the hugs. Raise your hand if right now you're obviously not quite sure anymore. Okay, so I did some research and I found out that technically, according to Urban Dictionary, O's are the hugs, X's are the kisses. And a friend of mine asked me, and I'm like, I don't know. And so I was wrong, but being a man, thinking I was right, trying to prove myself, I did more research. And I found out I was still wrong. Well, my point to you is this. I'm asking you tonight to be open to a new way of looking at speaking. Experts question what they know constantly. So that's what I'm asking you to do tonight. Question what you know about speaking. Okay, now lights. Thank you. Let's go to Anaheim, California.
Contestant number 5, Darren LaCroix. Ouch. Ouch. Darren LaCroix. Can you remember a moment when a brilliant idea flashed into your head? It was perfect for you. And then all of a sudden, from the depths of your brain, another thought started forcing its way forward through the enthusiasm until finally it shouted, yeah, great idea, but what if you fall on your face? What do you do when you fall on your face? Do you try and jump right up and hope no one noticed? Are you more concerned with what other people will think than what you can learn from this? Mr. Contest Chair. Friends, and the people way in the back. Ouch! Did you feel I stayed down too long? Have you ever stayed down too long? After 4 years of business school, I went out and I went for the American dream. I bought a Subway sandwich shop. Oh yeah. You're all impressed, I can tell. I don't want to brag or anything, but in 6 short months, I took a $60,000 debt, and I doubled that debt. That's right, I turned Subway Sandwich Shop into a non-profit organization. I financially fell on my face. But then I remembered, I was not the only one from my hometown of Auburn to fall on his face. You see, 100 years earlier, my childhood hero, Dr. Robert Goddard, had a ridiculous idea about building a device to take off from the ground and reach the stars. Dr. Goddard was the reason we landed on the moon. I remember when I had my ridiculous idea. I was listening to a tape of Brian Tracy, a great speaker. He asked a question. He said, what would you dare to dream if you knew you wouldn't fail? I struggled for an answer and then, bing! I'd be a comedian. But you have to understand my background. I wasn't funny. I wasn't considered a class clown. In fact, the first time my brother ever laughed at me was when I told him I wanted to be a comedian. Ouch! Who do you want to be? What changes do you want to make in your life? So many of us can see clearly where we want to go. And yet, we go back and forth. If I just had a little more time, if I just had a little more money, if the kids were just a little older. but we never take that first step. Dr. Goddard's first flight took off in Auburn and landed in Auburn. It only reached 41 feet, but it was a first step. There are strangers out there, people who don't even know you, who will make fun of your first step. When the local press found out about Dr. Goddard's ridiculous idea to reach the moon and his first flight, the next morning the headlines read, "Moon rocket misses target by 238,799.5 miles." Ouch! But those strangers are part of your process. We also have friends and family that love us and don't want to see us fall on our face. Imagine my parents' reaction when, after stretching their budget to help me through college, seeing me fall on my face and then I come home. "Mom, Dad, I want to be a comedian." I was met by silence. They too are part of your process. After a year of struggling in the comedy world, I'll never forget one night. I was bombing for 20 minutes. It was horrible. So I went for my surefire bit. I brought a woman up from the audience and she stood directly behind me. She put her hands forward in place of mine. It's an old improv technique. She would tell the story with her hand gestures as I would tell it verbally. And it works best. The more animated the hands are. Well, this woman stood there like an ancient statue. She didn't move. I turned to her in desperation. I said, "Please do something with your hands." She did. Ouch! I immediately called my mentor, Rick. I said, "Rick, I bombed. I died. They hated me." Rick said, "So?" "What do you mean, so? How do you argue it's so?" And then Rick reminded me, every comedian, every speaker, anyone who's accomplished anything has fallen on their face. It's part of your process. And then I remembered Subway. I fell on my face, but I never took the next step. It's the step after the ouch that's so important. It's so difficult. We don't like the ouch. We don't want to take that step, but when that foot lands, you are going to like that feeling. We learn from the ouch. In an effort to reach the moon, Dr. Goddard said, "Failures I consider valuable negative information. Information essential to each step getting closer to the moon." Dr. Goddard was an ouch master. We need to be ouch masters. If you're willing to fail, you can learn anything. I still have my day job, but now in my hometown, in our comedy club, my picture hangs on the wall. But it's because I took the step after the ouch. I wasn't given the gift of making people laugh. I was given the opportunity to take a next step. So for you, what's your next step? When will you take it? Take it. I didn't want to look back on my life and think, never did try that comedy thing, but instead, I paid all my bills. We're all going to move forward and try and reach a point, but we're going to reach a point headed to our goals where we get stuck and we can't move. And when we're so afraid of that ouch, we forget that if we lean forward and take a risk and fall on our face, we still made progress. Go ahead and fall. Fall forward. You see that gesture? Okay, I didn't do that because I knew I won. I did that because I gave the speech I came to give under the pressure of the World Championship contest.
You have no control over the other contestants, but you have a lot more control over you than you think you do. So that was the winning speech. That was version 23. Okay? I gave it 22 times. I videotaped myself 21 times because the prison club didn't allow video. But I gave it 22 times before that end result. So I'm going to take you back to one of the very early versions. Raise your hand if you've written a world-class speech. There's always a couple. Raise your hand if you've written a world-class speech. All right, let me rephrase the question. Raise your hand if you've written a speech. See, that's not what I meant. See, I believe you've written a world-class speech. You just haven't finished it yet.
Yeah.
I love Toastmasters. One of the biggest mistakes that we do at Toastmasters is here's how we train people. We train you to write a speech and give the speech and get feedback. And write a speech and get feedback. And write a speech and get feedback. And write a speech and get feedback. We don't train you how to incorporate that feedback. Why do we give you the feedback if we don't let you then do it again? That's the power of the contest. I became good not because of the coaching as much as the ability to get the feedback, get the coaching, and then apply it. And get the coaching and apply it. How often does an average Toastmaster give a prepared speech in a year? How many times? Guess. 4? 12? Average. Average. Real life. All right, is it fair to say 4 or 5?
Yeah.
Okay. In a year, prepared speech, but here's the problem. We give the speech, we get feedback, and then we teach you to write a new speech. Here is an average day during those 77 days when I was working on my championship speech. I would get up early in the morning. I would go to a breakfast club, give the speech, and get feedback. I would go to my day job. I would leave at lunchtime, take an extended lunch. I would then go give the speech again and get feedback. I'd then go back to my day job, work till the end of the day, and at the end of the day, I would go to a community club at night and give the speech and get feedback. In an average day, I did what an average Toastmaster does in 6 months. I'm not special. I'm a guy who used the tool of Toastmasters better than most. Because if you're given a brand new speech, each time you give it, 4 times in a year, you are going to get more comfortable. But you're not going to reach your full potential at that pace. I was a member of 4 Toastmaster clubs. So long before I was even in the speech contest, I was given a speech at one club, and then I go give it again at the next club, and give it again at the other club, and give it again at the other club. I learned me and storytelling better. You've written a world-class speech, you just haven't finished it yet. That's my message. So what you're going to see now is version 3. So 1, 2, 3 out of the 23. Pull out your handouts if you don't have them out already. And here's what we're going to do is we are going to break this down so you know what to start looking for. This is that perspective. Can you see this okay? Does that work for you? Trying to get everybody in. Can you see it? Are you old enough to be here? Let's check in. All right. So what we're going to do is break it down into must have and must avoid. Based on what I learned from my coaches, you're going to walk away with a checklist of if you want to have a great speech, you must have these elements. And you must avoid these elements that are common mistakes. See, that's what Mark could see quickly and easily in just a couple of minutes scanning my speech, that I could have looked at it for years and never seen those. So this is the value of your speaking, is your perspective. Mark gave me his perspective. I'm leaving you tonight with my perspective from my real life experience. When you're speaking, that's what we want you to give, your perspective. One of the biggest problems I find at Toastmasters, creating your own speeches, you undervalue your experience. You undervalue it. Your stories matter. There are people in your Toastmaster club who need to hear your stories. But instead, I see people in Toastmasters taking Tony Robbins speeches or Chicken Soup for the Soul stories and regurgitating them. I can read a book. I want your experience. So now I'm going to show you version 3, but here's what I want you to look for. What's the difference between we're going to call it the early version and the winning version? Because I'm going to teach you how a coach looks, but you have to do this. I'm not going to just do all the talking tonight. You're going to do some work. It's a workshop. It's not a listen shop. Okay? So I'm going to ask you, and you're going to tell me what's the difference between the early version and the winning version, and then I'm going to put it onto this coaching checklist for you so you get how to look at this. So if we can get the lights again, sir. Now, when I show you, go ahead and shut it off. When I show you this video, I want it to be very clear, thank you, right up front that this was not intended to show to other people. This is for my own use. So the video camera is just sitting in the back. It doesn't follow me. I wasn't wearing a suit. I should have. I fall off of screen because the camera is just sitting there on a tripod. So let go of that. But tell me, what's the difference between the early version and the winning version?
Here's the speech. Yeah. You remember a moment when an idea jumped into your head. It was perfect. You could feel the enthusiasm reach your eyes. And then all of a sudden, in the back of your brain, this tiny little thought started forcing its way to the front to be heard. And then all of a sudden, that little thought said, but what if you fall on your face? What do you do when you fall on your face? Do you try and jump up quick so no one else notices? Do you think maybe it's not worth the risk? Are you more concerned with what other people will think than what you can learn from it? Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, what do you do when you fall on your face? What do you expect? I went out for 4 years of business school and I went for the American dream. I bought a Subway sandwich shop. You're all impressed, I can tell. I don't want to brag or anything, but I took a $60,000 debt in just 6 short months. I doubled that debt. Turned Subway sandwich shop into a non-profit organization. But I was 22, I knew everything. I had all the wrong expectations, though. And then I remembered back to a man from my own hometown of Auburn, Massachusetts, that had great expectations. In 1899, Robert Goddard climbed a cherry tree. It was a beautiful autumn afternoon. And he climbed to the top of the tree, and he started to daydream. And he looked out over the field and up to the sky, and thought, how wonderful would it be to build a device to take off from here and reach the stars. Dr. Robert Goddard is now known as the father of modern-day rocketry. He's the reason we put a man on the moon. He said that the day he climbed up that cherry tree, he realized he was not the same person he climbed down. He was different. What are your ideas? What are your dreams? How do you visualize where you want to be? What's your cherry tree? I'll never forget mine. I was driving down the road one afternoon, and I was listening to a motivational tape of a speaker named Brian Tracy. And I listened half-heartedly, and then all of a sudden he asked a question that changed the course of my life. He asked, what would you dare to dream if you knew you wouldn't fail? I couldn't answer it. I shuddered, I shook, I had to pull over the side of the road, and all of a sudden the thought hit me. Bing! I'd be a comedian. That would be great. Make people laugh. That would be wonderful. Except it was never considered funny. I was not a class clown person. It might as well have been a rocket to go to the moon. Okay, it's all I can handle. That might be the longest I've ever allowed it to go. But anyway, what I'd like you to do for right now, for the next 60 seconds, I want you to turn to your neighbor and discuss and jot down the difference between the early version and the winning version. Go.
hands once if you can hear my voice. Clap your hands twice if you can hear my voice. Clap your hands 3 times if you can hear my voice. Best way to get a Toastmaster's attention, ask him to clap. I'm supposed to clap? I forgot. Anyway, so before we get your feedback, I'm going to pass it. Has this been a little insightful so far? Yes. All right, we're going to ramp it up now. Now it's a heavy, heavy content. Before we do that, I'm going to pass this around. I have a newsletter where I send out weekly tips called Stage Time, which is my mantra and my brand. So if you would like to get new updates and tips as I go through life and presentations and coaching executives and things, I would put that in there. I write every article, and I don't share your email address with anyone. So if you'd like to get Stage Time, just jot your email address down. Who gets Stage Time already? Raise your hand. Worth your time? 3 people. Excellent. Good sales pitch. Raise your hand if you like quotes. I love quotes. So I created a website called 365inspirationalquotes.com, where I send you a quote every day for a year, because I think we all need a daily dose of good. If you would like to get my quotes, there's a little circle there that says quotes. Just check that off, and I will add you to that list. And raise your hand if you would like to be a professional speaker someday. If you would, I have created a website called 52getpaidtospeaktips.com. That even if you're not ready yet to jump into that, I will start training you and helping you to understand. So it's about a 5-minute audio lesson I email you every week for free about the business side of speaking. What I've learned since I started in 1995 is when I started part-time in NSA. So just check off 52 paid tips if you'd like that. So that being said, now we're going to go to you. So must have and must avoid. So tell me the difference. What's a difference that someone noticed? Right there, sir.
You made greater use of pauses in your championship
Pauses.
speech.
Got it. So write this down under must have. Pause, but write this down. Pause to reflect. You might have heard the old Presentation 101, pause for effect. Okay, here's what I say to that. Blah! This is not theater and drama class. Okay, there's a place for that, but as a speaker, it's a different pause. And we want to pause to allow the audience to reflect. I learned from Patricia Fripp, my speech coach. By the way, write down her website. She has hundreds of articles for free. Fripp, Fripp.com. Fripp, Fripp, that's her last name, Fripp.com. And she taught us, she says, Darren, learning happens in the moments of reflection. That's when you reflect back on your life and how it applies to you. That's when it matters. So just because you're getting more words out doesn't mean they're learning more. That's a big, big mistake. So pause, and we pause and write this down under must have. Y-O-U, focused questions. The most powerful word that we have in the English language for speakers is the word you. Why? Because you means you, Jesse, but you also means you, everyone. So it's a very powerful word because it's so versatile. Not so in other languages. But let me explain. Whenever I say the word you, do you ever watch someone who's kind of nodding off in a presentation and someone will say their name? Let's say Kathy's nodding off, which she would never do. But Kathy, okay, is nodding off, and I'm doing a presentation. I notice Kathy's kind of like this, focusing from jet lag. Just came in from North Carolina last night. And if I said, isn't that right, Kathy? What would happen with Kathy? Cannonball. Okay, well, guess what? Whenever I say the word you, it's kind of like a little tap on the shoulder. And what I'm doing is that I'm inviting you back into the speech. I'm like, here's how this applies to you. So whenever you can say the word you, what Patricia taught me is look at what is your I/you ratio. How many times you say the word I versus how many times you say the word you in a speech. And most of the time, most presenters are I, and at the end, you should too. Okay, and what I've learned in our philosophy is if I don't get the relating up front, you're not going to be engaged in what I have to say. If I just start telling you a story about me, you may or may not be interested if it's an intriguing story. But if I set up or frame the message about you, and I ask a you-focused question, can you remember how you felt just before your icebreaker speech? Remember those feelings that went through your body? You know, on the outside you tried to remain calm and professional. But on the inside, you didn't dare pick up a bottle of water because you'd shake it all over. Okay? So what I'm doing is I'm bringing you back to an experience in your life. Then I'm going to tell you a story, but now you know why the story matters to you. So that's a Craig Valentine brilliantism, which is called TAP, T-A-P, and transport. And what that means is to tap into the audience's world with a you-focused question so they can relate to the emotion of the moment. And then you transport them into your story. Tap and transport. So now we know why the story relates to me. Where in my life this story is going to encounter. So I know I'm going to get something out of this if I ever run into that situation again. So it's very powerful. So going back again to you. Can anyone guess? Are you okay if I give things away for free? Hey, have a problem with that? No. Is that against any Toastmaster regulation? Okay. So free. This is we do an event every year in Vegas called Lady and the Champs. I mentioned that. Patricia Fripp, Craig Valentine, Ed Tate, and me. 2 days, 20 breakout sessions, 5 main stage sessions, and I put it all into this thumb drive. Online, this is $197. But I will give this to free for whoever gets closest. Whoever gets closest. So, here I come. I haven't asked the question yet, but thank you. To the answer. To the answer. I forget who I'm dealing with. Toastmaster. Okay, so here's my question. How many times in my championship speech did I say the word you or your?
25.
You or your. Raise your hand. You or your. How many times?
52.
52.
33.
32.
75.
That's okay. 100. 100? There's only 750 words.
77.
So, yeah.
81.
60.
28.
28.
17.
17.
36.
36.
45.
Okay. 10. All right, stop. Who said 33? What is, both of you? Okay, what is your name, sir?
Rodrigo.
Rodrigo. Catch, Rodrigo. Give him a round of applause. I'm still up here. I haven't left. What is your name?
Yoko.
Yoko. You're both wrong. But you're closest. 34. 34. So you meant to say that. Exactly. Thank you. That's funny. So 34. So what that means is a 7.5-minute speech, I said the word you or your 4 times a minute. Over 4 times a minute. Now that's not the benchmark. Don't use that as a rule. But look at how many times. So my opening words. Can you remember a moment when a brilliant idea flashed into your head? Okay? Right away, I'm bringing you in. I'm tapping and transporting. That engages your audience. That's what we need to do. So please forgive me. I love Toastmasters. And if you've ever opened a speech before tonight and said, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, your grandfather did. But from tonight on, never ever start a speech that way. I get that it's polite. But we're not here for polite. We're here to help people. We're here to make a difference. We're here to leave a new perspective. Now, I'm okay if you say it. But like I did in my speech, after your opening, between your opening and the body of your speech, engaging opening. If everyone starts off their speech in the same way, blah. I know there's 1 or 2 Toastmasters who would like to shoot me right now. Go ahead, please put me out of my misery. Okay? All right, so what else did you notice between the early version and the winning version? Yes?
You cut down the part about the rocket guy.
Okay? Right down under must avoid. Two things. First, too much, and this is a technical term, blah, blah, blah. Okay? And I'll tell you the next one in a second. Too much blah, blah, blah. What I did is, when Mark and Dave, my coaches, started work with me, they said, Darren, you need to write out your speech. And at that point in my career, very ego-driven and very, thinking I knew everything, I was like, but you don't understand, I'm a bullet point guy. I need to be in the moment. I can't be locked down by words. They said, Darren, do you want help? So I sat down at my computer. I couldn't do it. I got nothing. So I called my coaches. I'm like, look, I really want to work with you. I can't just write it out. They said, okay, Darren, here's another way you can do it. Go give the speech. Record it and transcribe it. Ha! That I can do. You ever transcribe something, a speech you gave? I encourage you.
Good exercise.
Eye opener.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was a big aha for me because when I looked at it, see, I realized one of my best attributes is my energy. One of my crutches is my energy. One of my faults is my energy, that I can rely on that. You still need to look at what you're saying. So I transcribed it. I gave it to my coaches. 1,492 words it started with. They said, go tell everything you want to say. But it's kind of like Michelangelo with a big block of clay. Then you need to carve out the angel. So every day, so I used word count, 1,492. Every day I would celebrate when I would look at my speech and I would say, okay, how do I say it better in fewer words? Write that down. That's brilliant. How do I say it? It doesn't happen often, so I have to shine a light on it. How do I say it better in fewer words? But if you keep asking yourself that, you'll get the answers. So every day I would celebrate, I'd send Mark a new version of my speech. Mark, got it down to 1,132. Mark, I got it down to 1,092. Mark, I got it to 983. So I would celebrate every time I could take a paragraph and turn it into 2 sentences. Jerry Seinfeld said that he would spend 6 hours to take an 8-word joke and make it a 6-word joke. Well, think about it. He's a comedian. They get paid the closer the punchlines are together. How do they get the punchlines closer? Fewer words. But they still have to communicate clearly. Same thing for you and I. How do you say it better in fewer words? And I'll answer how to do that in just a second. But while we're on it, must avoid too long to first story. When you take too long to get to your first story, it becomes preaching. Write this down as well, which goes under there. Too much narration. When you tell stories in narration, you become a preacher. Even on Sundays, people don't like that anymore. They don't like being told what to do. They like figuring it out when they're given a good story. Okay, so too long to your first story. So Bill Gove, one of the best speaker coaches ever, said, all speaking is tell a story, make a point. Tell another story, make another point. Tell another story, make another point. So if that's the case, then we need to get to that first story as quickly as we can. So don't take too long to get to that first story. And how do we make it shorter and better at the same time? The learning that I did with my coaches is, write this down, dialogue. If I could get you to do one thing to be more interesting, it would be to tell your stories in dialogue. Dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. What do I mean by that? In this version, the winning version of the championship speech, here's how I told the little story about mom and dad. I told my parents I wanted to be a comedian. So here's how I did it in the winning version. So I went home. Mom, Dad, I want to be a comedian. I was met by silence. Okay, that's dialogue. You heard the conversation. What most speakers do, and what I did in my early version of the speech, this is how I told the exact same story. So I went home to tell my parents I wanted to be a comedian. They were speechless. They didn't know what to say. Wow! Same story. One's in narration, one's in dialogue. So if I could get you to do one thing, it would be to use more dialogue. Have your stories in dialogue. It's more memorable, it's more compelling, and when you add emotion to it, you can say more in fewer words. That's the power of it. Dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. Next thing I want you to write down is hologram. Some people say hologram, hologram. You know what that is? You remember that? For our younger generation, Star Wars. When R2-D2 put the little picture, three-dimensional picture of Princess Leia, it's a hologram. But what does that mean for you and me? You need to understand that the audience sees holograms when you speak. Whenever you're telling a story, or there's a memorable moment, there becomes a place on stage in their mind. For example, when I fell forward on the stage, very opening, you notice when I stood up, I actually stepped to the side. I stepped out of the hologram, stepped out of the story, and now became the speaker, the narrator. It's okay to have some narration. You need some narration to connect the dialogue, but I stepped aside. Here's what happens. The audience's mind, they see me laying there on the stage. Later on in my speech, I called back to it, and after my subway failure, I said I financially fell on my face. See, I was pointing to that hologram. 99% of what we coach when I'm coaching is clarity, clarity, clarity. Clarity, clarity, clarity. So under must avoid, put, movement without purpose. Most speakers think there's three places on the stage. Hi, how are you? I'm over here this time, and now I'm in the middle. This is the power spot. And I'm over here. I don't want to forget you, huh? And oh, it's been a while. I'll be over here. Have to even it out. I want to make sure everybody's happy. No one's neglected. That's not how it works. There's more than three places on the stage. There's actually depth. There's actually way, way over here. Did you notice when I talked about my winning speech and then I took you back to an early version, you notice I used the stage as a timeline. It's on purpose. Because guess what it adds to? Clarity, clarity, clarity. So for example, we had in the Own the Stage program, it's a 2-day coaching camp that Craig Valentine and I do together. We had a gentleman who was being coached who said a prayer at his uncle's funeral. And so he was kneeling at the casket, told the story, he let us hear his thoughts, and it was very good and very powerful. So later in the speech, he decided that he and his family were going to celebrate the uncle's life instead of mourn his death. So they decided to go and, his uncle loved to have picnics, so they decided to have a picnic. So they went to the park, they took a picnic blanket, threw out this picnic blanket. What's the matter? Right in the casket! Why? Because there was a hologram of that first story and you just put another one on top of it. Now, even if the audience doesn't know what the problem is, something doesn't feel right. See how powerful that is? And so, what does that mean for you? You need to separate your stories on the stage to different parts of the stage so we understand it. So if I was to have a conversation with my grandfather when I was young, so I'm 6 years old there and having a story with my grandfather right there. Later on in my speech, I could be over here talking to you and say, that's just like the conversation I had with my grandfather. See, if I'm pointing to that spot, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Why? Because the dialogue happened here. See, when you're in the story, picture yourself as in the hologram. Picture a hula hoop right on the floor. And when you're in character, your characters make eye contact with the other characters. You don't make eye contact with the audience. Okay? When you want to talk to the audience, you step out. Now you're the speaker. I see a lot of speakers who are telling their story, and then and it's like, is the other character running around the room? It makes no sense. But you don't know to look for that yet. This is what I discovered from my coaches, that I never saw a world like the holograms. What? You focus dialogue? Huh? So you see what I'm saying? It's very powerful. Is this good so far? Yes. Cool. All right. Let's see what else. So hologram, dialogue, moving without purpose. I'm going to continue to add to this as we go. But what I thought would be a great idea is, I'm telling you what's going to go wrong. Tomorrow, by the way, contestants, you cannot come up here. I'm going to invite a couple volunteers. If you're in the speech contest tomorrow, you cannot volunteer. Is everyone clear on that? Because you cannot get extra exposure. That's like a Toastmaster rule. And by the way, contestants, all that I'm teaching you tonight, don't change a thing. It's too late. I'm serious. Go with what you have. If you try to make a change, it's very likely that you could have a freeze. Please don't. Review your notes after tomorrow. Anyway, I'm telling you exactly what you're going to do. Tomorrow in the speech contest, take this sheet with you. I guarantee you're going to see most of these challenges. Because knowing it and actually doing it are two different things. So what I'm going to do is bring a few examples up here, and we're going to have some volunteers just do the first 1 or 2 minutes of their speech. But today, I was fortunate enough to be picked up by your past district governor. Now picture this. I have these two large pieces of suitcase, two large suitcases, my computer bag, and another carry-on. And I'm standing there waiting for Kathy, your past district governor, to pick me up. And all of a sudden, this beautiful woman in this red sports car, convertible. And it was like one of those movies, like from 10, it's like. And all of a sudden I was pretty psyched, and then I looked at my luggage, and I looked at the trunk. Yeah, it was interesting. Well, you'll see it on Facebook. It was anyway. When I got to know Kathy, I met her several years ago, but didn't really know her well. But I didn't know that she coaches people in TED Talks. That's a great deal of what she did. So in our conversation throughout the day, I said, "Would you join me on stage and help me coach?" Because I realized she could give you another perspective. And I always think, what's the best value for the audience? So usually when I do this workshop, I'm doing it with another world champion, but since they're not here, we'll bring on the supermodel. So now, I want to tell you, because I know she's your past district governor, she did not plan on this, so she would never take the stage wearing sneakers and jeans, and she's been driving around in a convertible all day. I don't have an issue with my hair. So she has cleaned up for you, but I just want you to know that she's wearing the jeans not out of respects, out of she's being in the moment and willing to do this. So please welcome to the stage your former district governor, Kathy. Is it working?
I don't know, are we on? Here?
Press and hold, should turn green.
There we go. Ah, thank you.
She brought me to the falls today. Where do we go? The falls?
Multnomah Falls, we went out to Edgefield. We drove
Way cool.
like in 3 hours. I got to the airport and I was like, are you up for doing a tour of the gorge? And he's like, I don't know what that is, but sure, whatever. But I went 80 to get back in time.
Yes, and
No ticket.
my hiccups were gone.